Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thank you for being here. As always, thanks for listening and thanks for your ears. Thank you for having ears. I don't know if I've said that enough to you guys down the years, but thank you. Thank you. And thank you, nature. Thank you, evolution, for giving us sticky out things on the side of our heads with which we can hear. Where would we be without them? We just look like weird, snake-headed fools, the lot of us. But thankfully, that is not something we have to contend with in this particular dimension. So we will carry on with the show. Today, Friday, is Transfer Deadline Day. Yeah. It's a bit of an underwhelming Transfer Deadline Day, isn't it? Because there's a weird thing going on. We've made a signing. And potentially by the time you've listened to this, we will have made another one, or we're very close to making one. It will go through on Transfer Deadline Day, that being Cedric Soares from Southampton, having already signed Pablo Mari from Flamengo. But I do feel as if there isn't quite the same anxiety over the transfer market that there would have been if, let's say, Unai Emery was still in charge. Let's say that Raul Sanllehi had got his way and given him a new 7-year contract in the summer and it was too expensive for us to fire him and he was still in charge and we were desperate for players to make things better. I think there would be much more angst. People would be far more on edge about what we did or didn't do in the market. And this time around, I feel like we're sort of looking at it in a more objective way, if you like, because we've already had to kind of take a step back, reassess, take stock and say, well, this is a bit shit. It's kind of really bad. This is going to take more than a couple of January signings to make better. So let's strap ourselves in, make a flask and a couple of sandwiches and just get on board for the ride as Mikel Arteta turns the great ship of Arsenal around, slowly turning it around and around until I've got to turn around this way, but the cables, so it comes this way and we've turned around again and now the cables are all caught up in the chair. I really didn't think this through. Hang on. Fucking headphone cunts. Fuck you. Anyway, so the fact that things have been bad and are getting a bit better and we can see a kind of progress and we can see that there's a project here that needs to be undertaken and it needs to be undertaken properly and that recruitment is an area which needs to be improved as much as any other at the club. We're kind of willing to say, well, maybe January isn't the best time to sign players. Maybe we're just going to have to wait until the summer and do it properly. Now, you might have reservations about the people doing it properly who didn't necessarily do it properly last time around. I mean, I get that, but I just feel like because of where we are and what we need to do, people have been a lot more chilled, in my experience, when it comes to this particular January window, because normally there is a measure of like, come on, sign someone, you better fucking sign someone, you better sign them or else. And it's not quite there. I don't think that's there. So, you know, not on my timeline and not in the mentions and not in the replies on Twitter, social media and blog comments and all that kind of stuff. Of course, people like signings. Everyone likes signings. Everyone would like us to make signings. But I think there's a realization that we kind of have to make better signings than we have in the past. And look, the two players that we've brought in, I hope they do, or I say that, we've only brought in one player as I speak, but I'm making the assumption that Soares is going to come in from Southampton. I think both of them are players who might be able to give us a help between now and the end of the season. I don't think they're players who are going to change this squad and make it markedly better. They might give it a bit more depth between now and May because we do have to concentrate on Premier League. We do have to concentrate on the FA Cup. We do have to concentrate on the Europa League because there are things that we can play for. And if we've got a deeper, bigger squad, it might make our chances of winning games better. Simple as that. Are they world beaters? No. Are we signing them on a permanent basis? It seems not. Maybe we will with Soares, I don't know. But with Pablo Mari, it's definitely a loan deal. And if he doesn't really impress between now and May, that's that. We call it quits. He goes back to Flamengo and, we continue our search for a central defender. I do get people who say, who have worries about loan signings because many of them haven't worked out in the past. When you look at the track record and the history of our loan signings, not many of them have been particularly good. So if Soares and Pablo Mari can book the trend, then all the better. I do think as well it's not unreasonable to be slightly concerned about the provenance of the two players. Again, let me make this very clear. I hope they are good and I hope they play really well for Arsenal and I hope they can contribute something to the team and the squad between now and the end of the season. That goes without saying. It should go without saying. But I do think the fact that Pablo Mari is a client of one of Raul's best agent friends, and the fact that Soares is a client of George Mendes, who we used as a go-between to get the deal for Nicolas Pepe over the line, I just think it's okay to be a little bit concerned. I think you have to, as a football club in this day and age, deal with the agents. You have to. You can't just not deal with them, and these big agents have lots of good players. But they also are not, what's the word I'm going to use here? They're kind of in it for themselves, agents. Many of them. I don't want to tar all of them with the same brush, but, it's their job to get the best deal possible for the player because it works out well for them, etc., etc. So, you have to deal with agents. I just, have a few little concerns, few little alarm bells ringing over the last number of deals that we've done. For example, Pepe, George Mendes involved in that. And Arsenal's head of football is Raul Sanllehi. His former Barcelona colleague, Marc Ingla, was the Director General of Lille. Two guys who know each other very, very, very well. They couldn't work out a deal together. Had to bring in George Mendes. David Luiz, Kia Joorabchian is his agent, one of the big super agents. Also very closely linked with Edu. Sanllehi's buddy Arturo Canales, who was the guy who basically brought Unai Emery to Arsenal by convincing him that he had a very good chance of getting the job, which, turns out he did. And he did get the job. But he's the agent of Pablo Mari. And of course, George Mendes is the agent of Cedric Soares. So when you look at the last number of deals that we've done, they've involved those big agents. I get it. Some people will say, well, that's just what you do to get deals done. And, one of the reasons these guys are successful agents is because they have lots of players. So if you say, we need a central defender, he goes, well, actually, I've got a central defender. Or we need a right back. It just so happens that I've got a right back that would be perfect for you. Maybe that's exactly what it was. Using those contacts, it was expedient. It helped us do business in January at a very difficult time. If that's what it is, then that's what it is. But if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, chances are it's a duck. Unless it's a vulture disguised as a duck. I'm not suggesting that there's any impropriety whatsoever. And again, I hope these guys are fantastic players for Arsenal. I just think it's worth considering the recruitment process and how deals get done. Just something to think about. That's all. Just something to think about. Right, well, look, let's get on with the show. And I'm going to assume that Cedric Soares will become an Arsenal player in the next 24 hours or before the end of the window. And we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about Pablo Mari. And I'm also going to make the assumption that, the recruitment wasn't simply based on Raul Sanllehi's contacts book, but also looking at the suitability of the players for the kind of football that we want to play. Perhaps looking at their statistics and their metrics and obviously what they do on the pitch. So with me to discuss the two guys from a statistical point of view and where they might fit in the team and everything else. From 7 a.m. kickoff, it's Tim. Hello, Tim.
Hello.
Hello. Let's talk first about Pablo Mari, a central defender who has come from Flamengo. And he's come to Arsenal in a very unconventional route, it would be said. That he went to England, he went to Manchester City. He didn't play for them, but he spent a season at Girona in the second division in Spain, a season with in the Eredivisie in the first division in Holland, and then another season in the second division in Spain with Deportivo La Coruña. He then went to Flamengo. He seems to have come into himself, if that's not an unusual phrase, but seems to have taken a step forward in Brazil in terms of how he's performed, and they seem to be very happy with what he's done there. What is it in him, do you think, that Arsenal have looked at and said, yes, this is a guy that we want to bring in to help us for the rest of the season?
Well, the first thing that stood out was that he won 71% of his tackles. So now, obviously, the different divisions, different leagues, different speeds and different ways that the games are played. But having a center back who wins, over 70% of their tackles is a huge improvement over some of the things that we've had here at Arsenal. And I don't hate Mustafi as a human being, but this season he's definitely way down in terms of his. It feels like in terms of his overall attitude, he seems really low. And that shows up in the stats. He's only won 29% of his tackles. Now, that is one count. There's a whole bunch of different counts. I'm using the one from StatBomb.
Okay.
So he's only won 29% of his tackles there. And he's being dribbled past over one time per game. So compared to Mari, is it Mari or Mari?
Well, he's got the accent is on the end. It's on the I, so it would lead you to believe it's Pablo Mari.
Okay, Mari. Mari has only been dribbled about 0.4 times per 90, and Mustafi about 1.3 times per 90.
1.3. So, I mean, what is the sort of? I mean, is there an average, or do you know that off the top of your head when it comes to a central defender?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I know that that's too many for us.
Yes, I think we can all see that with our eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the first thing. The second thing is he's really good with his passes. Now, of course, Flamengo play possession type football, but that's what we're going to play. And he's a 93% passer, regular passer. So he actually looks a lot like David Luiz in that 50% long bombs, 93% regular passes. Both of them are excellent tacklers. They both win possession about the same amount of times, about 0.8 times per 90 for each of their tackles. That's really good. And they both intercepted about the same rate. So it's overall, he looks a lot like a carbon copy of David Luiz.
Right. What about his aerial ability, given that he is 6'3", and he would add some height to the center of our defense. I mean, it feels to me anyway, like we've had a succession of kind of 6-foot center halves, which is not a bad height to be, but sometimes you need the guy who's 6'3", 6'4", or 6'6", 6'7", the BFG guy who can just add that something at the center of your defense to deal with aerial bombardment. What do we know about Mari in terms of his aerial game?
Well, it's not. They don't have a lot. I mean, he isn't called to do it a lot. So he's only 69%. That sounds low, but actually David Luiz is 55%. Chambers, who you would think, big Englishman, is 53%. And Socrates is 68%. So he's right there in that range of he would be one of our better aerial duelists, if you will.
Sure.
But one of the things I found was odd was when Mertesacker made the jump from the Bundesliga to the English Premier League. He lost a few points off of his aerial duel percentage, but also he wasn't challenged as much in aerial duels. And it wasn't that he wasn't trying, but what you find is when you have a big player like that, as you know, you played center half, teams will try to play around you. They're not going to play it. They're not going to try to get you into an aerial duel with a guy who's 6'3". So that would also explain some of his lower numbers. But yeah, he won 2.5 out of 3.6. So that's comparable to Socrates, who won 3 out of 4.4. David Luiz, who is taller than Socrates, won 1.6 out of 2.9. So he's up there in that. Again, the Brasileiro, I probably murdered that, is different than the Premier League for sure. So he's going to have a challenge there, and I'm sure that the teams are going to come after him to start, but we'll see how he holds his own. That's an interesting thing to look at as he goes along.
Yeah, I think what Tim wrote in the profile is that Flamengo are a very dominant team. So he's in a team which aren't, not that they're not tested, but who tend to dominate games, and that's not been the case with Arsenal, it's fair to say, for this
Not
season.
yet.
Not yet. Things are changing, but we'll come to that. Don't worry. So from a statistical point of view, we're looking at a guy who is a good passer, he's a good distributor, has got good long ball distribution as well, a good tackler, decent in the air. It's a matter really of adaptation and seeing whether or not he can make it make the step up in terms of energy to Premier League. Statistically, from what we've seen of him, he ranks highly against what we've got.
Yes, I would put him. I put him up there. I think he's going to give some competition for. Well, you and I had a little discussion about this already, but I think he's going to give some competition to Socrates. I have to say I'm excited for this guy. He seems like the kind of defender that we've wanted for a long while. He's left-footed, which we don't have very often. I think, was Koscielny our last one?
No, he wasn't left-footed. Vermaelen was our last one.
So there you go.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to find those guys, and when you can find them, if they can distribute, it's a great benefit to the team. I looked at the stats for the Liverpool game, the cup final.
Oh, yeah.
The Club World Cup final. Mm-hmm. I'll just read some of those off to you. He was 3 for 4 in the tackle, so that's good. He made a tackle successfully in the 18-yard box. I think he led their team in clearances with 7. Yep. So he cleared the ball quite a bit. He played extremely left. It was unusually far left. Almost in the left back position.
Right.
And I think Tim wrote about that in his column that Felipe Luis, it allowed Felipe Luis to go forward quite a bit. So actually you see Mari's passing numbers are really low in this game. Obviously you've got Liverpool adding a lot of pressure, which they do. 80, I say low, they're 81%. You have Liverpool adding a lot of pressure, and then also he's playing in a much more forward left role than I would expect from a center half.
Right.
So all of those things, I mean, I think overall he had a really good game. Didn't make any mistakes and made that one important tackle in the 4th minute of that game.
Yeah, I suppose a good marker as well, considering who he was playing against. Liverpool are, as we can all see, a really brilliant team at the moment, and Salah, Mane, Firmino, they've got such threat going forward. So to do well and to match up against what they've got to offer is very interesting. So we'll wait and see.
I wanted to add one last thing.
Sure.
So one of the things that's odd about David Luiz is that he has incredibly good entry passes into the final third.
Yeah.
He averages 3.6 final third passes, and then almost a half of a pass into the penalty area per 90. That's really great for a center half.
Yeah.
So I looked at that Liverpool game, and with Mari playing really high up the pitch, he had 7 passes in the final third. So that averages out to about five or so per 90. So it looks like he can do the business of getting the ball forward, which is something that I think Arteta is trying to do with the center backs.
Certainly, when you look at the way we've got this left-sided bias now in terms of attack over the last number of weeks, with Saka, the way that Xhaka is slotting back into that sort of auxiliary left-back position to distribute the ball down the left-hand side. And also, it gives you somebody who can switch play as well. If you bring everybody with you, then you bang a long ball with your left foot to the other side of the pitch. It's an interesting tactic. So it will be interesting to see, how he fits in, where he fits in, if he's, going to make it into the first team alongside David Luiz or be a backup for him. We'll wait and see. So let's talk Soares, Southampton right back, 28 years of age, Portuguese international, almost out of contract. It's a bit of a surprise, considering we have Hector and we have Ainsley Maitland-Niles. But it does obviously feel as if Mikel Arteta has wanted, what's the word I'm going to look for, an established right back to provide competition for or understudy Hector Bellerin. As well as Maitland-Niles has done, he has said he doesn't really want to play there, he doesn't fancy it there. So, he's got Kolasinac and Tierney on the left when they're fit. In the meantime, Saka's doing a great job. But on the right-hand side, he does only have Hector Bellerin as an established right back, regardless of how well Maitland-Niles has done. So what is it about Soares that has made us go, this is the guy? Do you think it's how he has performed statistically, or is it the case that he's got only a couple of months left on his contract? We can do a relatively cut price deal on him if we decide to go that way. It's expedience, it's availability. Is that what's driving this one more than performance?
Yeah, I'm actually at a little bit of a loss with this player. He's only played 31 total full 90s for Southampton in the last 2 years.
Right.
So that's not a lot of data. I mean, it's an okay amount of data, but the numbers I see for him are not outstanding in any way. 68% tackler. He's just a poor dribbler. He doesn't even try. This season in particular, he doesn't even try to dribble. He does win the ball quite a bit, but it's a very odd signing. I'll just quickly, some of his stats that are really good are oops, wrong thing. I always click on the wrong thing.
Tell me about it.
So he is a 70% tackler this season. Okay. So that's good. Again, just a lot like Mari. Bellerin is also having a very poor game tackling this season, only 33%. And I can't quite figure out why, because his interceptions numbers are back to his regular.
I would say that's the injury, and I'd say it's about trusting his knee and being sure that when he goes into a tackle. I think that's one of the things players have to get over, is this psychological fear of going into tackles. I think probably the data set with Bellerin is quite small as well, isn't it, this season? He's only played 8 or 10 games at the most.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the thing I'm thinking is, if we're not going to play Ainsley Maitland-Niles, then what are they looking for in bringing Soares in? And I think the first thing is his tackle numbers are very good. Bellerin has been dribbled 2.6 times per 90. So it's not just bad, it's real bad. So bringing in somebody like Soares who can beef up the defense, I think that's got to be the point of this signing. That said, he has some kind of unusual numbers all around. His passes into the final third are 0.8, whereas Bellerin are 0.51 this season. Again, that's this season, where he's still recovering from injury. And Soares's crosses into the penalty area are almost half a cross per game, whereas Bellerin's 0.26 and Ainsley Maitland-Niles is 0.1. So It's not even comparable. I mean, so if Soares can get forward, he seems to me like, according to the data, a pretty good crosser of the ball.
Yeah.
So we might be looking for something like that.
I wonder, sorry to cut across, I just wonder, is that when it comes to Bellerin, when it comes to Maitland-Niles and their crosses and what have you, I wonder, is that in some ways a consequence of the way that we're playing? With Arteta in particular, I think the right back doesn't overlap anywhere near as much as the left back. And I know you're working on data across a whole season, so that could be just a pie-eyed theory that I came up with without thinking it through fully enough. But it does feel like the left back has got a bit more license to get forward, which seemed to be the case last season as well with Kolasinac. That a lot of what we did was down the left.
Yeah, no, those are both. I think I agree with you in terms of my eye test as well. What I've seen from Maitland-Niles is that I think Arteta is either holding him back or he's not able to make those kinds of connections with Pepe the way that Saka and other forwards on the left have made, especially Martinelli. That's obviously a good combination there. So yeah, I think you're right that Maitland-Niles has been held back a little bit, which does then again, if you go out and get a really good tackler or somebody who's really solid in defense, that does make a lot of sense. If you're not trying to get forward on the right-hand side, then having somebody who's a solid defender who can back up Bellerin, I think is a pretty decent call.
All right. Well, look, again, we'll wait and see how he does. And we're making the assumption at the time of recording that he is going to sign. So hopefully we haven't put the mockers on this one. Let's just talk very quickly a couple of little things about Mikel Arteta and how he's stacking up compared to what came before him. What is maybe the one statistical thing that stands out of Mikel Arteta's very short, we have to say, reign so far? It's only been 6 weeks or whatever it is, maybe not even that. In comparison to what Unai Emery was producing, what has Arteta done that stands out in the stats?
Well, it's definitely the defense. I mean, the number of shots that we've conceded per game is down from 16.1 this season under Arteta to around 11 under Emery. I mean, excuse me.
The other way around. Yeah.
Flip those around.
Yeah.
God. I'll have to do some penance for that. Emery's Arsenal allowed 16 shots a game.
Yeah.
Arteta's Arsenal is around 11. So I think that's a huge improvement. We haven't seen quite the improvement in the offense yet, but I think that's coming. I don't know when, but we hope to see a little bit more control of the games. We're seeing a lot more control of the games, which is why the shots numbers are down. The defensive midfielders are holding position a lot better, which is helping to cover the defense. And then what we need to do now is try to figure out a way to get the ball forward a little bit better. And so I think that's coming. I watch every interview from Mikel Arteta, and I believe that he's moving this incrementally in that direction.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I don't think you can be a good, effective attacking team unless you have some kind of a defensive platform or some idea what you're doing defensively. It's just not possible. Not possible to produce not consistent numbers from an attacking point of view unless you've got a platform from which to attack. Otherwise, you see what happened to us at Watford, for example. You just get turned around and the opposition gets a record number of shots on goal and, everyone's going crazy. So, yeah. Well, look, that is going to be the next thing that we'll look for in the stats, obviously, and hopefully the amount of shots we take can increase, the amount of shots we allow can decrease a little bit further. But to take nearly 50% off what we were conceding in a very short period of time is a big improvement, isn't it?
Yeah, and to do it without just packing the defense in and playing 8 at the back or whatever. Yeah. That's actually doing it that way. Packing the defense in like that is actually counterintuitive to a lot of people, but that actually is the reason why Emery's team allowed so many shots, because they were so timid that they just sat back, and that's never good for a team. The other thing I'd like to look for with, and I don't have the data yet, so I'm waiting for about 10 games in before I start to say anything about this. But a couple other things is that Emery's Arsenal was super passive in terms of defensive duels. So in terms of attacking the ball when they were out of possession, tackles, interceptions, all those things, it was a very passive team. So for a team that was allowing that many shots, they were also passive. It was doubly bad. So what I'd like to see is whether there's an increase in those numbers as well in terms from Arteta. And I think there will be. I've already seen some slight increase in the numbers of tackles from some of the forwards. So all those things are really good indicators that we are defending from the front all the way to the back.
All right. Well, things to keep an eye on, and no doubt you'll keep us up to date with those. Maybe we're overdue a column on Arseblog News, and of course everyone can read your own stuff on your site. 7 a.m. kickoff. Tim, thanks very much.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to Tim. Find him on Twitter at 7 a.m. kickoff, and of course at 7amkickoff.com. Now, socks. Are you happy with your socks? When you look down this evening and you take off your shoes or your trainers or whatever it might be, and you look at your socks, you peel them off and you throw them towards the linen basket in the room and you miss, and you go, God damn fucking socks, and you have to walk all the way to the other side of the room to put your socks in the linen basket. But are you happy with those socks? Could they be better? Could they be more vibrant? Could they be more Arsenal, dare I say it? They could, with thanks to our friends from Soccer Club. That's right, soccerclub.com have got 5 pairs of Arsenal socks to give away to lucky Arsecast listeners. All you have to do is send me an email to our competition email address, which is competition@arseblog.com. It's not that difficult, even though every time we do a competition, somebody on Twitter goes, what was the email address for the competition again? And I'm like, come on, dude, seriously, have a think about it. What might it be? And they're like, no, seriously, what is it? And I'm like, come on, just go back 20 seconds or whatever it is in the podcast and listen to it again and write it down or something. Okay, it's competition@arseblog.com. So competition@arseblog.com. And please, if you wouldn't mind, answer this very, very challenging question. The socks are in the pattern of a very famous Arsenal kit. What is that kit? Is it A, pox-ridden pear, B, grizzly grapefruit, or C, bruised banana? If you think you know, email competition@arseblog.com and you could win a pair of socks from soccerclub.com, where soccer is spelt like the word sock. So soccer, like a sock, soccerclub.com. And if you don't win and you still feel like buying some of their socks, you can use the code ARSEBLOG10 at checkout to get a 10% discount for the entire month of February. So check out soccerclub.com, enter the competition. I'll give you the winners on next week's show. This week, Arsenal signed Pablo Mari, 26-year-old central defender on loan from Flamengo. And with me to discuss the signing, what kind of a player he is, and lots more, we've got Marcelo from the Flamengo account, which is Flamengo, E-N-G, Flamengo Ing on Twitter. How are you, Marcelo?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Not bad at all. So let me ask you this question first, because I think you can read a lot into how a player is perceived by the reaction to his departure from a football club. Sometimes a club can sell a player and people are like, whew. Other times they're like, no. What's the general reaction among Flamengo fans been to his departure?
Well, we're definitely going to miss him. We believe that Pablo Mari was of huge importance to adapting to the new style of defending that our coach Jorge Jesus was trying to implement, a more high defensive line, more or less what you guys are used to seeing over there in most European leagues, with the major clubs. Which is, however, in Brazil or in South America, it's really not the way they try to play. So when Jorge Jesus, arrived during the summer, which for you guys is off season, for us is in the middle of the season because we followed the calendar year. He was trying to implement a high defensive line, and the center backs that we had on our squad, they weren't aware, they didn't know how to play like that. And so the importance of Pablo Mari coming from Europe, and as soon as he arrived, he got right into our starting lineup and really helped Jorge Jesus implement a high defensive line, and also with teammates, alongside his teammate. And defensive Kyle. He settled in right away. So we're definitely going to miss him out here. And we wish him all the success of Arsenal, at Arsenal, of course.
What were the expectations when he arrived? Because, he's come back to England, having gone there initially to Manchester City, but he never played for Man City. And, they've had some iffy central defenders in their time, it would be fair to say. But he never managed to make the breakthrough. He spent quite a bit of time in the Spanish second division. When he signed, the route from England to Spain to Brazil back to England is very rare. What were the sort of expectations of him when he arrived in Brazil? And did he live up to them, or did he exceed those expectations?
Well, he definitely exceeded because we didn't know much about him. The only thing that we, once Flamengo signed him, that we knew that after reading about him was that he was under a contract with Man City, but never got playing time. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't know anything about him, and we didn't know what to expect. So as far as, hoping what we would see, he definitely exceeded just on the fact that we didn't know anything about, his CV and like I said before, he really adapted well. I mean, he arrived, in the middle of the season, no real time to train because as soon as he arrived, we had a fixture the next day, and he played. I believe once he signed, he played about 5 to 6 days after signing for Flamengo. So so he really adapted quickly. So
Sure, and in terms of what kind of a defender he is, how would you categorize him? I mean, you speak about Jorge Jesus wanting to play a high defensive line. I've seen some people talk maybe that perhaps he's not the quickest defender. How does he work within that particular system? Is that something? Is that a part of his game that can be exposed if that is a weakness in his game? Is it more difficult to talk about that because Flamengo have been so successful and so dominant? Has he really been tested in that regard as a defender?
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch because, playing the high defensive line in South America in general, you really don't see it. So, but, playing in the Premier League is a whole different ballgame. Now, I believe you also have to take into consideration, the current conditions of your center backs. You guys are dealing with a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
And even when you're not, I'll be quite honest. I don't follow the Premier League that close, but I do follow. Try to follow, keep myself updated, and I do see let's just say some frustrations with Arsenal fans as far as their center backs.
Yeah.
David Luiz we know him very well over in Brazil. So, but yeah, I think you guys taking that into consideration and the emergency you guys have for signing a center back. I really think he can adapt well. It's going to be a reality check, of course, because the levels of quality of matches from comparing Brazil to the Premier League is a huge gap. But I think he has, as far as something that can help him, is that when he signed with Man City, Arteta was in the Man City coaching staff. So Arteta knows some about him. So I'm pretty sure that once the opportunity was there to sign him, I believe Arteta is banking on him being a contributing a defender to help you guys, while you guys your center backs heal, and he should be a nice fit. I really think that he's going to come through, and in second. You guys didn't really, the fee you guys are committed to him, it's not really a big amount of money when we're talking Premier League budget. So,
yeah.
Even if it doesn't work out, I believe you guys, it shouldn't hurt you guys that much.
What would you say will be the biggest challenges for him when it comes to the Premier League and adapting to Premier League football versus the kind of football that he's playing in Brazil? We know that Mikel Arteta wants Arsenal to be much more a possession-based team, which I think, from what we understand, and we did a little bit of a stats piece on him earlier, his passing is very, very good. He's a very solid passer of the football, so that will suit him, obviously. But in terms of what the Premier League might throw at him in terms of physical challenges, those kind of things, is what would you say is the thing that he's going to have to overcome first?
First will be the actual fitness, because over here players are just beginning to come back to start the season. So he's been on vacation for the past 30 days. So I don't know, condition wise, I don't know if he's ready to jump in, and I believe he is. He was just about to start the preseason training over here at Flamengo this week. I think he had maybe 2 or 3 days of preseason workouts, but at most, if that. But so fitness might be an issue. He may need a few days to get up to speed on his fitness in order to play. But besides that, once that's worked out, I believe he'll have a good impact on the Premier League, and you guys should really be hopeful for the signing you guys did.
And if there are weaknesses in his game, I think it's rare to find a player who is absolutely flawless. So every player has his weaknesses, and it's not to be critical to suggest that a guy might be better in some aspects of the game than the other. From your experience of watching him for Flamengo, what would those be? Are there things that you've identified that he could improve on in his game?
To be quite honest, no. For us,
wow.
Himself and playing in our defense, he really did almost everything perfectly. Flamengo set all the records in our national league here as far as points and everything, and we won the league in within seven match week advance. We won the Libertadores. So for us in Brazil, he was near perfect. So wow. I don't know as far as the language. I don't know how he maybe a language a little bit of a language.
He speaks English. He speaks English.
He does, yeah. Okay. There you go. So if he has that as well. So it's just a matter for him of adapting to the style that's playing in Premier Leagues, coming off a vacation for him. That might be the biggest hurdle he'll have to oversee in the first few games. But as far as his quality and his skills, you guys have a solid defender there.
All right, it's very interesting. Yeah, very interesting to hear that a guy has been that good.
Yeah.
And obviously
for a guy that nobody knew. Nobody knew of him.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, sometimes a player can be a really late developer. They can scratch around in different leagues, and all of a sudden, at a point where you don't really expect them to make a step forward, they can do that. We've seen it in the past with players who are late developers, and they blossom into something really good. So, just finally, is there any expectation on your part or the part of Flamengo fans that you won't see him again? We know it's a loan deal. It feels to me like regardless of what happens, Arsenal have, done a deal which probably makes sense to make permanent, given that there's a fairly significant outlay for the loan signing, and I don't know that it would be that much more to make the deal permanent. Maybe in the summer we've got a bit more money to do that. But, I mean, do you guys have any expectation that he might be back, or do you feel like, well, this is it, he's moved on and the Premier League is where he's going to be?
No, the general feeling here is that he's moved on permanently. Considering the transfer itself, it's a loan with an option to buy at the end. The fee, if I'm not mistaken, is you guys laid out about €5 million for the loan, and then another 10 at the end if you guys wish to trigger the option to make it a permanent move. We know that for Premier Leagues, that's not really a lot of money. Once this deal began happening, the player right away signalized that he wanted the move to happen. So we don't see him come back. He's, technically he's still under contract with us until the end of 2022. But we don't see that he's going to come back if by any reason Arsenal does not wish to make it a permanent move.
You've already signed a replacement, isn't that right?
Yes, we did. Yeah, the same night that we announced that he was exiting, we signed a replacement for him. So, yeah, I would find it very strange if for any reason he returns to Flamengo after the loan deal is done. We would assume that any other club with the time that he's going to have now at Arsenal, another club might pick up the option on him for sure. But it's an interesting path, and one that we haven't seen, at least not in my lifetime, where we have a European player that maybe didn't take his opportunities, as he's playing in Europe, and start getting loaned here and there, and then takes the path of going to a place where he has really no connections, South America or Brazil. So, he adapts well and has a great 6 months of play where he catches the attention of a major European club that, is willing to take a shot at him at the age that he is. I mean, if you see what's going on globally in soccer, major European clubs are, spending their money on very young players from South America to develop them, and then, hopefully that investment will work out or pay out. But, to see a player at 26 years old that, didn't break through at a younger age, moved to Brazil, had an awesome 6 months and caught the attention of a major European club and is having another, shot at, playing at a major European club. It's interesting to see. It's certainly something that we're not used to seeing.
No, I've never seen it either. Not that particular pathway to the Premier League. And maybe, there's something about that and something about his character which says, okay, I'm willing to do this differently. I'm willing to take a different path to everybody else to give myself a chance to do it. And it's worked out for him. It worked out for you guys because he played very well, perfectly for you, and helped you achieve, lots of success there. And hopefully he can do the same at Arsenal. Marcelo, listen, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it. And, you'll have to keep half an eye on the Premier League now to see how your boy is getting on.
No, we'll definitely do it, and we're certainly rooting for him.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thanks to Marcelo. You can follow him on Twitter if you're interested in Brazilian football or Flamengo. He's at Flamengo ENG. Flamengo ENG, Flamengo English account. And thank you to him for his insight to the new signing, Pablo Mari. Okay, well, this weekend we face Burnley at Turf Moor, our final Premier League game for a couple of weeks because there is a winter break built into this season. We don't play next weekend, but there will be Premier League games. It's staggered. We'll play the weekend after, and the teams that play next weekend will have the following week off. So every team gets a 2-week break in the middle of the season. Sensible, I think. And when you're Arsenal, when you've had injuries, when you're still in the Europa League, when you're still in the FA Cup, when you're trying to get back up the table, 2 weeks off to recuperate, recharge the batteries, get some rest into those legs, let some players recover from injury, and crucially, for Mikel Arteta to work on some things tactically on the training ground rather than just kind of going game to game because they're coming every 3 days, will be pretty useful. So the club are going to, the team rather, are going to Dubai, I believe. Although there are some worries about that. I'm not sure how serious they are about the coronavirus hitting Dubai, so they're keeping an eye on that apparently. But all going well, they will do a few days of training there and hopefully get some good work under their belts. Come back in a couple of weeks' time. Our next game then, I think, is Newcastle at home, and hopefully we'll be fighting fit and ready for that one. But this weekend, we face a team who are always difficult, but against whom we have got a pretty good record. I think the last time we lost to Burnley was in the Carling Cup in 2008, an Arsenal team which contained Paul Rodgers at right back, Mark Randall, Fran Merida, Amaury Bischoff PI even got off the bench to play in that particular game, but we lost 2-0 at Turf Moor. But, in general, regardless of how difficult Burnley are, and they are a difficult team to play against, we've got a good record against them. Mikel Arteta will welcome back Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang from suspension, so you imagine he is going to go straight back into the team, and you do wonder where exactly he is going to play. Alexandre Lacazette didn't play in the FA Cup game, so he's had a bit of time off, but will Arteta keep Gabriel Martinelli in the team on the left-hand side and play Aubameyang up front? I don't know. We'll wait and see. The young Brazilian has done plenty to merit his place in the team. It's about, I guess, who he feels might be more impactful from the bench should he need it. Will it be Lacazette, who doesn't really score a lot of goals away from home? Should he start with him up front and hope that he can break that duck, or should he just play Aubameyang and play Martinelli, given he's been in good form and playing pretty well, got an assist the other night and has got some goals in the last couple of weeks? I think I would be more inclined to keep Martinelli in the team, to be perfectly honest. He's done well enough and played well enough and worked hard enough not to get dropped. So we'll wait and see what Mikel Arteta does. I'm not sure if the new signing is going to be available or involved. Pablo Mari, Shkodran Mustafi, of course, picked picked up an injury during the week, but it seems from his social media posts that it's not anywhere near as bad as it looked on the night or as feared afterwards. He was hopping around on the training ground doing piggybacks with Mesut Ozil, so the zany guy is feeling okay. So, he could be involved. Socrates, Luiz, Rob Holding, etc., are all there. So plenty for Mikel Arteta to decide and to work out ahead of this one. A win would obviously be very, very welcome because we've only won 2 of our last 16 Premier League games, which is not a great record. I know things have been better under Mikel Arteta, and I'm very excited, very enthused, very optimistic about what he's doing, how he's doing it, and what he can bring to the team and the club in the future. But we also need some points. We need some points on the board, on the table, under our belts, whatever way you want to put it. We need points. And wins will beget wins. That's a very old Bible saying. I don't know if you know that one. It's from the book of Victorious, chapter 2:0. And he says, thou shalt winneth, please, if you wouldn't mind. For verily, as God's children, we cannot abideth not winneth thing this much. It's been a bit of a while since I read that particular chapter of the Bible. It's going to be mad, isn't it, when Marvel buy the rights to the Bible? That's going to be crazy. They're just going to have all these new characters. Samson and Mega Moses and the Good Samaritan. Yeah. They need to take the franchise in a different direction. Watch out. It's going to happen, I promise. All right. I'm going to leave it there for now. Thank you as ever for listening. Remember, if you'd like to join us on Patreon, you'd be very welcome. You get access to extra bonus content and podcasts, including a brand new episode of Waffle coming next week, in which James and I talk about anything and everything except for Arsenal. There's loads of stuff there. It helps support what we do on the site, so you can join up for a $5 a month at patreon.com/Arseblog. James and I will be here on Monday, hopefully discussing a good win, a good result, a good performance, and whatever might have happened in the transfer window between now at the time when I'm recording this on Thursday evening and the close of the window at 11 p.m. on Friday night. So have yourselves a fantastic weekend. I'll talk to you on the next one. Until then, take it easy. Cheers. Bye-bye. I was sitting there doing the crossword, stuck on 6 down. Former Chelsea captain, 4 letters. I had UNT. For the life of me, I couldn't work out what the first letter was. Then the guy walked into the office. He was a strange-looking cat, small but with a massive head, like a human space hopper. What do you want, mister? I said. Look, he said, I work a very important job. I think the people don't trust me anymore. Why's that? I said. I don't want to get into it, he said. Let's just say 1 or 2 deals didn't reflect so well on me. So you want me to build up your reputation, I said. Yeah, he said. Exactly. Then it came to me. 6 down. Cunt, I said. Well, if that's your attitude, I'm leaving, he said. I'll find another PI. I lose too many clients that way.